for joining today. Perfect. We are now good to go. It is Thursday, April 24th, a little bit past due. Gotta love technology, which I'm talking with somebody today, Mr. Garrett Goldman. He's one of the managing partners of StateWP or State WordPress, talking about how to combine website security and performance to grow your business. Garrett, thank you for coming and joining here today.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to chat.
So I'm glad to have you, and I know we've actually we met, I believe, part of the Bay Area IT group. Shout out Alex Rader. I do appreciate it. It's a great group, gets you connected with awesome individuals. But one of the first things I want to understand, because everybody has a website, most MSPs think about securing their website, but I don't think there's that combination of security and performance, meaning visibility, SEO, having your potential clients and partners being able to find you. So, what is kind of that first step in combining performance and security with the website? What are the easy things or the lower hanging fruits that you really see, much like when we were just talking about the Stride site ahead of time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first it's really important just to recognize that these aren't separate lanes. It's one
Mhm.
part of a larger system. So a fast and secure site is not just enough anymore. It's gonna to rank. It's gonna help convert visitors into clients, and also it will help rank a website. Generally, what we're gonna try to do is optimize the stack, things like better hosting, caching, clean code, and then lock it down with the security side of things: firewalls, multi-factor authentication, and regular scans. The combo reduces downtime, protects the reputation, and also keeps marketing dollars working. So growth on a site isn't just going to happen on a slow or vulnerable site, but when you combine
Mhm.
both the speed and the security, the site becomes more optimized both for users and for search engines.
Got it. No, I think that makes sense. I think there are some tools where you see Google will be like, hey, if it's not secure, if it's HTTPS and so on. So I think there are some tools, but I think people often just default, oh, I have a website developer. I have somebody who's helping me out build my website, or we built it ourselves. They're just assuming that those things are being done in that combination. SEO matters a lot for us here at Stride. We spend a lot of time with content and or keyword search and really making sure we rank. What would you say is that first step for a business owner to take a look to say, hey, is my website really optimized for performance? What is that first step that they typically are looking to take around their website?
Yeah, and so I'm gonna comment on something you said while you were asking this question about the people aren't paying attention. They get the site built and then they kind of forget about it. The one
Yeah.
thing about a website is it's never done. It requires constant monitoring, constant updates, and so I just wanted to get that point out there. It's not
Yeah.
a project that you work on and then forget about it. More specifically to your question regarding kind of SEO, and I want to make sure I hit the question because I got a little sidetracked with that point I wanted to make. Um,
No.
but at the end of the day, Google doesn't rank on just keywords anymore. It ranks on trust. And so
Yep.
if your site is hacked, if it gets blacklisted, flagged for any sort of suspicious activity, you ultimately can lose some visibility. And so all of the work that you've been doing towards your optimized search engine placement, it can tank. And so even
Yeah.
little things like spammy redirects, malware injected links, it can destroy SEO over time. You mentioned that for Stride, for example, that SEO is really important. Business owners need to make sure that if they want to rank high in a Google search engine ranking, that they're doing things like monitoring the performance and keeping the site up to date for security. Security might actually help the performance. There's a whole bunch of other things that we would put on our checklist to make sure it is staying performing well.
Yeah.
But ultimately, monitoring and updating are the key elements to making sure that search engine rankings stay in place or improve over time.
Yeah, because obviously you maintain and do support and security for many websites out there and companies. What are some of the threats to the security that you're not aware of that can happen? Because obviously we've all probably gone across, hey, this isn't a trusted website, this isn't secure. And I've seen it for massive, large, companies that you see on TV, on advertising everywhere, and they're not doing it. I can assume that most, million to $20 or $20 million companies are probably experiencing those. So what are some of those security threats that just aren't really as transparent or necessarily seen as, frequently in the business owner's eye, but you see pretty constantly and consistently?
Yeah, well, I mean, you mentioned a real easy one, low-hanging fruit, the not having an SSL, so the HTTP versus
Yeah.
HTTPS, for example. These days, a modern browser won't even let you visit the site, though. If you don't have that SSL, you usually get some sort of warning. Generally, people think that a hack site looks something like it was taken down, or if you're a business owner, maybe you got a scary ransom note saying that you got to pay us in Bitcoin to get your site back up or something like that. But
Mhm.
generally speaking, hacks these days, especially for a professional service company, it's going to be a little bit more invisible. Things like silent script injections, redirecting the website to another site that they want to, the hacker might want to try to drive traffic to. And
Yeah.
oftentimes these hacks can actually last for weeks without people even realizing it. And unfortunately, at that point, it's a little bit too late. The site could have been blacklisted, it could have been flagged by
Yeah.
Google, and you start losing some of those search engine rankings. At the end of the day, there are bots scanning the internet all day, every day. They're
Yeah.
looking for
Yeah.
vulnerabilities. And
Yeah.
so if you're not keeping it up to date, if your site is vulnerable, you don't have an
Mhm.
update, you don't have an SSL, they're going to deploy tactics to try to exploit your vulnerabilities.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting because I'm sure there's some distinct differences between, let's say, just a service-based business where it's really informational or conversion-based of generating leads and contacts for the business. What are some of the things that you see on the e-commerce side? Because I know we support many companies that have Shopify and different stores that are tied directly into their WordPress. What are some of the security threats, obviously, besides, hey, faulty credit card transactions, stealing of banking? What are some of the things that those e-commerce type businesses face that you've, handled in the past?
Yeah, sure. I mean, frankly, it's a common theme throughout any type of website, whether it's a brochure website from a
Mhm.
professional service company that never updates their website, or through a very complex, high volume e-commerce website. Now, some things that might be more specific to e-commerce, it's definitely going to be the commerce side of things. When you're
Yeah,
buying
okay.
something online, you're either going to be creating an account with this vendor, or you might be checking out it as a guest. Regardless, you're going to be inputting personal information, sensitive information. It could be,
Yes.
name, email, your mailing address, credit card information, all the things that are going to be needed to fulfill an order. Now, generally speaking, a well-run e-commerce website are going to use third parties that securely take the transaction information and securely store that. Usually, these are systems that might be separate from the website itself. Now, we focus specifically on WordPress. There's a lot of WordPress e-commerce, but just
Yeah.
to help kind of paint this picture, you'd have WordPress acting as the website, perhaps your store. But then once the visitor or the customer goes to check out, they're going to be seamlessly redirected into a secure cart, which will then collect all of that information. Now, here's what folks don't always even consider, which is we're putting trust into this secure cart, into this secure processor.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so the vendor or the business itself needs to make sure they're using third parties that they can trust, that they are insured, that they're able to ask for and get security guarantees in some way or another. And so I would say those are probably the most common when it comes to e-commerce. But at the end of the day, the e-commerce
Yeah.
side is just as susceptible as the professional service site to similar hacks.
Yeah, I think you make a clear point that having a secure transaction and checkout process. I mean, I know I've faced it where I'm like, I don't even feel comfortable using my credit card on this. And I'm sure it was sometimes it's been a perfectly vetted, well-known, established vendor, but it doesn't mean that necessarily that they're taking and prioritizing security on their site. When a client starts and works with you, what are some of the first things that you're taking a look at? What are some of the things that, hey, somebody says, hey, I just got to a new website. I'm not sure. Things don't seem to be right. We're not optimized for SEO. Is it a diagnostic process? Is it a checklist? What is some of the process to go through and really optimizing a website for not only security, but then also performance side?
Yeah, I mean, it's both diagnostic and checklist, a diagnostic checklist, maybe. Ultimately, what we're going to do is we're going to run an end-to-end audit of the website. So we get a lot of professional service companies that come our way that they haven't touched their website in a while. So what our process is we're going to take this checklist and we'll go down this list to make sure all of the T's are crossed and I's are dotted. Essentially, things like what is the quality of their hosting account? Hosting is very, very important when it comes to performance. Inside the site, what shouldn't be there that is still there? It could be slowing the website down. What is outdated? Themes can be very bloated. It could slow the site down. Is WordPress? We work exclusively in WordPress. Is it up to date? Does it have all of the latest updates that make sure that it is secure and it is performing top notch? The code. We're going to take a look at the code. Is it spaghetti code? Is it bloated? Should anything not be there that is there? So ultimately, our checklist is going to include primarily this audit, which will remove anything that shouldn't be there, update anything that hasn't been updated, and then you're going to want to install some tools, monitoring tools, performance tools, things making sure that the cache is being optimized, installing things like content delivery network, CDNs, so that performance is optimized. So removing the bad, optimizing, and keeping current are sort of the checklist that we would generally use.
Got it. So it makes a real clear starting point. And then I'm assuming there's a big part of optimizing and ongoing support. This isn't, like you said, this is a living, breathing thing that's consistent. How often should, the average business, or let's say the average MSP, how often should they be updating their website or adding new content or taking a look at, for instance, like a Google's analytics or a search engine optimization like audit? How often should those things be done? And what is the recipe to making that happen to really say, hey, I'm an MSP and I'm in the middle of Irvine, California, and I want to be localized to manufacturers and companies in my area. What are the steps that somebody would take to get to that next point?
Yeah, a lot of parts to that question. So
Uh,
I'll try to address them all. You mentioned something, how often should companies be updating their content, for example? That is very company specific. At the end of the day, Google loves content. And so
yeah,
the more frequent you are updating with quality content, not AI junk content, Google is going to like that. If it's structured a particular way, they're going to see that you're very active, you are a thought leader in the space, and Google likes those types of things. But then on a
absolutely.
more technical side, which is where we would work, is you should probably be looking at your site daily, weekly, monthly at the longest. And the thing is, as I mentioned earlier, is a lot of these there could be silent killers. You just don't know if they're there. And if you're not checking these things, or if you don't have tools that are actively monitoring so that you don't have to check constantly,
Yeah.
you can ultimately damage the website and the company because something bad has been happening for some time that you didn't even know about. So I think one way to overcome that would be, installing some sort of monitoring tools. Was there a brute force attack? Was anything that shouldn't have been injected placed on the website? If you aren't installing these monitoring tools, then pretty frequent checks would be a smart thing to do. Now, one thing as far as performance is concerned, which definitely has an impact on SEO, is that performance degrades over time, especially
Yeah.
if you are actively using your website and publishing. So if you're spending money on creating content or marketing towards what you mentioned, sort of an MSP looking for to own a local market, performance can degrade over time, because if you're adding content, blog posts, new pages with imagery, it can slow the site down, especially if it's not optimized. So we would recommend maybe once a quarter running the site through some tests to see whether or not the site has slowed down, be able to identify some areas in which that can be optimized. We are looking at sites quarterly. We run optimization boosts usually twice a year, and those boosts are going to do everything I mentioned, is just optimizing the database, the cache, the website, the file structure, the media, and the hosting account. And so pretty frequent, I guess, is the real simple answer to your question.
Got it. Yeah, and I think that's key. And I think one of the other missed areas that I see, especially when I look at a lot of MSPs and digital agencies and companies that have had websites for a long time, is not optimizing for mobile browsing. I think it's
Yeah.
something like 60, you probably know better, but 60% of all web traffic and web browsing is done on a cell phone or a mobile device now, and it's only about 25 to 30% on a desktop. How often do you see websites that just aren't performing or getting the results they want because they're not optimized for a mobile viewing experience?
Every single day.
Every single
I
day.
mean, it's just every day, whether it's a prospect coming to us or me just navigating anecdotally throughout the web, see it every
Yeah.
single day. And there has
No.
to be a mobile optimization in addition to this desktop optimization. It's not necessarily a one size fits all, because what
Yeah.
looks right on a desktop may not be rendering properly on an iOS device versus an Android device, and so on.
And how do you manage that? I mean, obviously, you can't control what your end user's using to access your website. Is it having multiple websites? Is it making different formats, or is it just working with an integrator who understands here's what you're going to do to optimize this based on whatever viewing platform it is? Like, how do you go about solving that? I've always wondered because I've never been that type to be able to do that. It's always been, oh, here's the template. If it looks good on mobile, that's good enough for me. And then whatever the website looks like on desktop is fine. But how does somebody actually go and optimize for all sources? Because sometimes there's also tablets. I know tablets and
Sure,
iPads,
sure.
completely different format too.
Oh yeah, and we've now been in this modern computing world for a long time. There's also, besides having different size devices like a tablet versus an iPhone, we're looking at it horizontally versus vertically. But on top of that, especially on the enterprise level, there's sometimes very old laptops that are being used with really low. Oh gosh, I'm blanking on not visibility, but definition, just a high
Yeah.
definition monitor versus something that is a lower definition. So you do need to optimize for all of these. There's no easy answer to that question. Ultimately, there is a choice to either optimize everything and then kind of by hand, you're literally pulling up all of the top devices. So, you should be testing this on all of the major platforms, which would be like iOS, Android, Microsoft or Apple, Linux perhaps. You should be testing it on all of the major browsers. And so there is a bit of a manual component to this. Additionally, if you have a little bit more of a budget, you might be a larger company, you might specifically have optimized sites for a particular breakpoint, a particular device size, and frankly, you might have completely different websites for a mobile device versus a desktop. Now, that will create a phenomenal user experience because you're optimizing maybe a lot of resolution on a giant monitor versus a 3.5-inch phone. But that's going to take a lot more money, a lot more maintenance, and a lot more customization. So unfortunately, there is not one clear-cut answer. This truly includes a lot of manual checking, I would say.
I appreciate that. I think there is that always manager, you have to have a manual component to it because it's just sometimes it's as easy as pulling it up on the device, going to the next one and taking a
Yeah.
look and seeing how it really reflects. Now, my next question is going to be a little more nuanced around the SEO side, but
Okay.
I sat in a presentation at IT Nation, ConnectWise's IT Nation last year about SEO, and we were already ahead of this in terms of backlinks, as I'm sure you're aware. The importance of backlinks for search engine optimization, because like you said, it's not just keywords, and it can't be all this AI gobbledygook, generated text. You have to do that component of backlinking to another trusted source, another partner to get visibility, which social media sites don't count as backlinks. I want to make that pretty clear. That's something we've learned. But then also, it's about generating thought leadership type of content. How does somebody say, hey, I know I need backlinks. I know I need trusted authority type of content on my website. How do they go about implementing that without breaking their site, reducing security, and making sure that they're seen in the ranks, continuously improving? Because I always say, if you're not on the first page of Google, you might as well be invisible. I mean, for all intents and purposes. Will
Sure.
some people go to page 2, 3, 4 if it's a really specific niche topic? Yes, but how does somebody really improve from backlinking without breaking security and really building to be a trusted advisor type of a website?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, full transparency, we are not an SEO company. And so,
Hmm.
generally speaking, we have some SEO partners, and I suggest well thought out, highly strategic SEO campaigns. A strategic SEO campaign is going to include a lot of research as to not only who your audience is, but what is it that they're searching for. And then from there, you're
Yeah.
going to work backwards. You know, what kind of content should I be creating for this audience? What are my partner sites where I can put these backlinks? Now, what you mentioned though can have an impact on security or at least
Yeah.
SEO if you're putting a backlink on what Google considers a spammy website. And Google
Yeah.
does rank websites and they create some sort of spam level essentially. And so, unfortunately, if your site gets linked on a site in which Google considers to be a spammy site, it has a negative impact on your website.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's nothing you can do. Other times it just takes a lot of work to get that link taken off. So the important part is having a proactive approach to security. You got to keep the site up to date, plugins updated, themes and cores always updated, using the general security hygiene of frequent password changes. And by the way, these passwords need to be random and long and include all the characters. You
Yeah.
got to have multi-factor authentication installed everywhere. And, you know, these are the best practices. When it comes more to the specific SEO things like linking and your strategy, I would probably defer to an SEO expert for that.
Yeah, and I think really you hit the point that I was looking for on the security side because we've seen it too. You know, hey, you get pulled up by a publication or a paid for click type of website that now is backlinked to your site, but it's been flagged as spammy because it has a bunch of articles and content, and it's almost SEO farming because there's something in farming for everybody here, whether it's click farming, you know, link farming, and so on. I think really it's making sure that you're not associated, as you said, with other websites that have also been spammed. Is that something that would pop up if you did a security audit to show, hey, here's the websites that you have existing backlinks and here's where they rank? Is that something that you guys would be able to do?
Yeah, it is something we'd be able to do. Again, when it comes to more of the SEO focused work, it's probably going to be best handled by an SEO agency. They're going to
Okay.
run different types of scans and different type of reports. We certainly run these reports. We would share any information we got with our clients, but it's really not where we're focused. Where our work impacts SEO primarily is going to be things like speed, uh, and general performance of pages and the site itself, and then the security side of things, making sure that everything is up to date so nothing bad happens. Spammy links is a little beyond the scope of the things that we work with, and primarily because that's on the content side of things. We're
Yeah.
working more on the technical side of things.
And when you talk about slowing a website down, I think the old approach for most business websites was to have a ton of pages, meaning you have every about, every industry, every service and dedicated. But that's the type of stuff that slows a website down, right? Like there should be, I think, as you mentioned, there should be a purpose. Why is somebody visiting my site? And then building it from there instead of just saying, here's everything we do as a site, here's everything we have as a company. What are some of the conversations that you have when it's not even necessarily persuading, but stressing the importance of, hey, less is probably more from a terms of performance, speed, and security?
Well, I mean, you made a very good point. Every page needs to have a purpose. Otherwise, it just should not even be on the website. You're not going to be able to optimize that page for anything or for anyone. So, when you're thinking about your services, listen, if you have a whole bunch of services, I would probably suggest you want to list all of those services. Google still loves content. So having
Yeah.
multiple pages or multiple posts is not a bad thing necessarily. But to your point, they must have a purpose and they should be optimized for that purpose.
Yeah.
Now, on top of that, however, these pages might have, you know, heavy elements, videos, images, formatted content. You might be on a slow server. All of these things will have a negative impact on your site. So I would never discourage a company from publishing anything. as long as it has a purpose. I would strongly discourage publishing for the sake of publishing. And these days, the Google algorithm isn't going to give you any sort of benefit if you are just have a whole bunch of content. They would rather you see, Google would rather you see have really good content, showing yourself as a thought leader, current content that gets updated. But going back to the performance, so let's say you did have a purpose and you had a whole bunch of pages and a whole bunch of posts. You just have to optimize. So number one, the foundation is incredibly important. You don't want to build a house on a pile of sand without, drilling your pillars down to bedrock. Same is true for a website. You don't want to start spending money on a website if your foundation is poor, and the foundation is going to be hosting. You want to be in a premium host that is optimized for your platform. In our case, it's WordPress. You got to be optimized for WordPress. But then more at the site level, the optimization you and I already talked about, it's going to be image and media optimization, database optimization, and overall site optimization. The thing about speed too is it actually helps with security a bit. When a bad actor might be trying to attack your website with some sort of denial of service, the faster your site is, it might actually be able to fend off the hacker for a little bit of time. So following all of these best practices not only helps the visitor on your website, but can also have a bit of an impact on security as well.
Got it. Well, I really appreciate that. That's a real detailed and thorough explanation of that. We're getting close to the time here. Try to keep it as short as, digestible as possible. What's the 60-second, anything that you see around website security, backend structure support, the 60-second, too long, didn't watch that a business owner can take today and use moving forward in their business?
Great question. So security and speed are not optional. They're a foundation of trust, conversions, and long-term growth. I just mentioned the foundation is really important. So you want to start with a very solid foundation, a great hosting account, a great team, whether it's internal or an expert that is going to be able to keep your website up to date so that you're monitoring it all the time and it's never falling out of date. And that includes your core of your system and everything else that is plugged into it. Always follow the best security hygiene, things like multi-factor authentication, random passwords, frequently changing those things, and just monitoring in general. Publish, optimize, make sure you have a purpose and a point, strong foundation, I would say, are really some of the most important things.
Well, I really appreciate that. Garrett, thank you again for coming and joining today. You can check him out. You can check out the rest on statewordpress.com or statewp, I believe.com.
StateWP.com, that's right.
That would be where to look. And I say if anybody hasn't done an assessment, I would take a look at doing an audit security assessment of your website. See if your foundation's good.
We do, by the way, we do offer a free audit. So if you go to statewp.com, there's a free audit button right at the very top, and I'd be happy to do that for you.
We'll make sure we'll have that tag once we'll publish it to our blog, our stride.services website. You'll see it on there, and then a LinkedIn post in a week or so. We'll have that link so anybody who needs the access can go directly to the website. Garrett, thank you again. I really appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you, Casey. Really appreciate it.
All right. Perfect. That was good.